Welcome to the latest BuffZone podcast. I'm Brian Howell, and please be joined by my colleague Pat Rooney. Pat, how you doing today?
Doing well, Brian. Enjoying the sunshine. I know you should while you can.
Yeah, heading down to Orlando this weekend where it may not be sunny. It's supposed to be hot, but lots of wind and rain, and hopefully avoid a hurricane while I'm down there. So, so we'll see. But yeah, Buff's going to UCF for the first time ever. They've played them in basketball. I know you've been there, but they've never played them in football. So it'll be an interesting matchup. It's one of those ones that, with the move to the Big 12, I think these are the types of matchup I'm excited about to see just a new team, someone that,
Yeah.
that's the one thing we've talked about before. It's like I enjoyed the Pac-12, but you got to see the same teams a lot of times over and over again. So it's kind of cool to see some of these new teams like a UCF. So should be a fun game on Saturday.
Yeah, looking forward to it as well. And wondering your thoughts on this one. UCF is coming off a bye. Seems really early for that. I know there's been some talk about how that might affect a team. I don't know if it does, but I'll tell you what, they went and got a big win at TCU, and then had to take a week off and get ready for the Buffs, which might be fine. But I think 3 games into a season, you're just kind of settling into your roles and getting into the rhythm of things. And you're just coming off a big road win. If I'm that team, I would have wanted to get it going right away.
Yeah, for sure. Although this season's weird because you have two buys, and so you got to take, um, the two buys at some point. And but you're right. There's also the benefit of, hey, they get 2 weeks to prepare for a team
Yeah.
they've never seen before, and so um, they probably saw some new things with Colorado this last week they hadn't seen before. So yeah, who knows? I don't know how banged up they were coming out of that one, um, but yeah, it kind of early. The Buffs will have their bye next week, after 5 games. So, but yeah, I think it still benefits UCF that they had the week off and the extra time to watch the Buffs.
But then also speaking of big wins, coming off a crazy one for the Buffs. Obviously, we were both out there, and I kind of remarked to you, once in a while we've been doing this a long time, and every so often you still see something that you have never seen before, and probably never will again. And certainly that game the other night qualifies.
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how they won that football game, and I told people before that like that night I kind of went from, towards the end of the fourth quarter, I'm writing this story, and I'm thinking in my head, I can't believe they're going to lose at home to Baylor,
Right.
because it's such a bad loss in my opinion. Two, I can't believe they just beat Baylor.
Yeah.
It changed that quickly, and just the wide range of emotions. And we don't need to get into this topic too much, but like people have had their opinions on the fans, the students storming the field. Um, you know, in a wild game like that, when you go from, to use the cliche, the jaws of defeat, and
Yeah.
somehow win that game, I don't mind that. I mean, that was an all-timer game. That was an epic game. I mean, that's one that uh, it's not like people have compared it to the Miracle at Michigan. It's not the same because it's not the same caliber of CU team. But um, as far as the moment, that's got to be. I mean, that's an all-timer. That's one of the best that we'll ever see.
Yeah, I generally have no problem with the field storming. I think it's a different animal in basketball. I will say that everyone's closer together.
Yeah,
I think it can be a little sketchier in basketball at times, just for player safety, for fan safety. Football's a different matter. I mean, the only problem was if that hit by Travis Hunter had come maybe 1 foot deeper into the end zone. Uh, and they went to the video review, we might have had to try to figure out how to get everyone off the field. I don't know how that would
right,
have played out, but
right.
the fact that that it happened, I didn't have a problem with either. Let them have fun. It's one of the fun things about college athletics in general.
Well, it's almost like I was thinking about this. That it's almost like the refs in that the Steelers Raiders the oh my gosh, the Immaculate Reception.
Yeah.
When I've seen like the videos from that, and the ref says, they had to like go look at it, and like there was no way I was going to call that thing back in Pittsburgh when I would have been killed on the way out of there. Man, could you imagine those refs coming back with half the students on the field and saying, calls overturned. Yeah, it's a touchdown. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, he would have had to watch himself on the way out of the stadium. So that's almost maybe one of those ones you say, just call it good, get the heck out of there, and call it good. So yeah, it was legit. I mean, that was a
But it was
great hit.
legit. Yeah.
It was legit, um, I, and I will say, I mean, just really one of those nights that again, you'll never forget, and just fantastic plays from Shador, from LeJohntay Wester to make that catch, Travis Hunter, Cam Silman Craig making the tackle on the play before that, to stop the quarterback from getting in. So there was a lot of clutch plays made by the Buffs down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. And you wrote about it earlier this week. Obviously, Travis Hunter, who I talked about a little bit in the three extra points column. I think the Heisman hype is well deserved at this point, and
Mhm.
should only keep growing if he keeps playing like this. Absolutely, it doesn't even. I don't, and I'm one of those. I don't think the Buffs record should matter.
Yeah,
When it comes to his candidacy, just what he's doing is so unique and different and just impressive on both sides of the ball. But obviously, him and Shador Sanders did all the heavy lifting. But as you noted in the story earlier this week, a lot of unsung heroes in that game. A lot of guys stepped up and made big plays at big moments, and I helped them keep them in the game when things weren't looking too good. And but just boy, what a finish! I still don't know how Wester caught that ball. It was like three Baylor defenders that looked like they weren't even looking for the ball.
right. Yeah, and it was interesting when you go back and watch it how Baylor, covered that play. And, I mean, Wester was one on one, and typically in those Hail Marys, you see it's just a mass of bodies down there, and you hope one of your guys comes up with the ball. But this was a route, and this was, a one-on-one situation, and it was kind of interesting in that. So to me, it was a Hail Mary, but it was a little bit different than a Hail Mary than the typical one, because it just wasn't that massive of receiver slash DB bodies, down there in the end zone. So, but credit to those guys for drawing that up.
Yeah, and absolutely, there wasn't some crazy jump ball with two to three guys on each side going after it. It's almost like the ball dropped right into a window between where Baylor defenders were kind of roaming.
Yeah,
But obviously, just an incredible finish, and you know. The play before with the drop, we talked about this a little bit with Shepard. I mean, if he goes down there, and I don't know if he would have, it seemed like maybe he dropped because he fell because he was kind of, reacting to dropping the ball. But, if he goes down there short of the end zone, that's probably the ball game, right? There's no timeouts.
yeah,
The idea of being able to run down there and set up and either spike, you'd have to run a play. I don't even know if you have time to spike it
yeah.
and get one off in that time. Probably doesn't happen. So, maybe he gets it in, but it could have been a blessing in disguise right there. Just every little thing that could have worked out for the Buffs did in that sequence.
Yeah, and I'll point out too, and you're right on that play. And some people said, I think his momentum would have carried him into the end zone, maybe, but we'll never know. Impressive way LeJohntay Wester adjusted to that route, by the way, or to that
Yeah,
ball. He looked back and he saw that it was not coming where he was, and he kind of sneaks around the back of the defender who, didn't even see, looked like he didn't even see LeJohntay go behind him. And so, really fantastic. And when you watch the replay too, do you notice who was sprinting super fast and was right there? Had there been like a deflection, it was Travis
yeah,
Hunter,
yeah. Travis Hunter,
and
yeah,
you know,
sprinted across.
just impressive by him. And so yeah, and there was so many plays even in that drive. I mean, Shadur's 17-yard run on that 2nd and 24. There was times in that drive, Pat, that I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not winning this game. Like when you have the holding penalty that pushes you back, and now it's 2nd and 24. I think there was a sack before that. Like, well, this is the ball game. And then that 17-yard run by Shador was massive, in the long
Yeah,
run, because that gave them a shot. Then they had a poor spot on the next throw to
yeah.
Wester. I thought it was beyond the sticks, and so just an odd sequence, or wild sequence of events. Maybe not odd, but wild sequence of events. And all in all, Buffs get a win, and it was one that we thought they would win, not that way, but they got the win.
And as you mentioned, excuse me, what a difference that sequence makes going into this week. If you lose that, it's 2-2. You lose kind of one of the games you peg on the schedule as being kind of a winnable one
Mhm.
you chalk up in that win column, and then you lose it at home, and you are kind of behind the eight ball with all your goals, and you're at least behind the curve anyway for bowl eligibility and everything going forward. But instead, you're 3-1, feeling good about yourselves, and going into Central Florida. Brian, what do you feel like has to happen for the Buffs going there and have a good performance? I'm still, the offensive line obviously still has a lot to show in pass protection. This team played a little bit cleaner football in terms of penalties, but as you mentioned, still seem to have them just at the most inopportune times. And penalties have again been a problem in general this season. And how much of that do they have to clean up to even have a shot on Saturday? And what do you feel like they have to do?
Yeah, well, first off, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, they're basically on schedule. They kept on schedule by beating Baylor, on schedule for that bowl game. And I will say going to this one, I think that if they lose this, they're still on schedule. I mean, this is one honestly that
Sure.
I've penciled in as a loss, since the start of the season. And I we'll get into predictions later, so I'll get to this point later. But to answer your question, I think first off, they need to get the pass game going. UCF's been a solid defense. They got a Shador can't. He mentioned the other day. He goes, "I can't play like that again." He didn't play a great game, and he finished strong, but did not play a great game. He's got to play
Yeah,
sharper.
yeah. You and I talked about during the game, but he missed a couple throws that, I think I said to you, like, well, he doesn't,
Yeah,
we're not used to seeing him miss these. He's
right.
usually, just a couple on that he was off target on. I was, like you said, he rallied late, but he definitely had some errant throws that we don't normally see out of him.
Yeah, and yeah, somewhat credit to UCF. I mean, they came in as the number one pass defense in the country, and we talked about last week that I know they had not played, passing offenses. They were
Yeah.
coming off playing Air Force, who threw it 8 times. So I know it's skewed. They dropped down to number 20, by the way, after facing CU. But credit to them a little bit. But Shador, he was off. I thought most of it was him just kind of not being on his game, but he picked it up late, and
Yeah.
uh, our buddy Troy Andre, the basketball SID over there, he and I were talking after the game. He goes, this team sort of reminds me of those Elway Broncos that they may not have been great, but
Yeah.
you had Elway, you knew you had a shot, and they could rally you late. That's the way they are. This team is, I think, with Shador, and he was great in the end. But I think down at UCF, he's got to be sharp early, and the Buffs offensively have not really gotten off to a good start in any game. I think they might have scored their first drive against North Dakota State, but really it's been slow starts for most of the year. I think they need to fix that. Um, I think they need to keep doing what they're doing in the run game. I love what they're doing. The yards are
Yeah,
not there,
absolutely.
but I love that they're sticking to it because I wholeheartedly believe, even though I think it was 42 carries, 91 yards, which is nothing to write home about. But I
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly believe that because they had that many carries, that opened things up for some massive runs late in the game, like Michael Welch's 2 touchdowns late in the game. Isaiah Augusta had a couple of big first down runs. Those things don't happen, I don't think, if you've got 15 carries going into that fourth quarter.
Yeah, Shador Sanders is getting hit a lot, as he was last year, but they didn't have a run game last year. Again,
Yeah,
I wrote about it earlier this week in the Monday three extra points that, I think this is the kind of run game they need. It doesn't need to be
yeah,
a league leading rushing attack or anything like that. It needs to be effective. And they had a kind of dry spell in the middle of the game. Michael Welch had the 12-yard run out of the gate, and then it was
yeah,
really tough sledding for the better part of 2 quarters. But I'm with you. I thought the run game made some, key plays along the way as they kind of stayed in it, and then in overtime, just to keep the chains moving and to make positive plays on first down. Uh, a 4-yard gain on first down is still a lot better than, when Shador Sanders drops back right now, either a big play happens mostly, or he gets sacked, or maybe
right.
hit and is incomplete. And right now, it's almost a 50-50 proposition. So
Yeah.
anytime you can make positive yardage out of the run game, especially early in the down and distance, I agree with you. It's just going to keep opening things up for Shador Sanders more and more going forward. Certainly something they need on the road if they want to come out of there with a win.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the most I don't know, impressive, but one of the things I was most pleased with this game last week is when they did get in the middle of the game and they weren't running the ball well, they didn't stop. And
Yeah,
typically we've seen that to where
right.
if they have three, four carries in a row that don't go anywhere, that's it. They're done. They're almost done
Yeah,
running the ball for the day. They kept at it, and I thought that was huge, and I liked that. But yeah, they've got to have that. Clearly, he was hit way too much, even with that the other night. 8 sacks,
yeah.
and Baylor coach Dave Aranda said after the game, we probably should have had double that. He's probably not wrong. I mean, they were on Shador all night. This is going to be a different animal this week because UCF has not gotten to the quarterback. They've only got 1 sack in 3 games, and I know that's probably going to be an emphasis for them. I'm sure they're looking at some of these like the Nebraska and Baylor films, and thinking, "Huh, there's some openings there. We can get some
Yeah.
sack totals up this week." So uh, UCF only has 1 sack, but they're going to look to increase that, and so that they got to get that run game going.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially we don't know what the conditions are going to be like. I
Right.
think, um, you know, no matter what it is, I don't think it's going to stop the Buffs from putting the ball up in the air. But I mean, who knows if it's a
Yeah.
deluge going on? Yeah, you don't know what you're gonna be able to do. But they threw the ball well, and I expect them to stick with it. But if it is poor conditions, getting what they can out of that run game is going to be even more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because UCF's going to run it. We know that, and that's what's interesting about this game to me is it's kind of a contrast in styles, and that the Buffs we know like to put the ball in the air. UCF is the opposite. They can throw it with KJ Jefferson, but their bread and butter is running the ball, and they're really good at it. And the Buffs defense has been pretty good against the run, solid against the run. They've been pretty good, really good in my opinion against running backs. I mean, it's really quarterbacks that have burned them. But this RJ Harvey from UCF is a really really good running back, and I think he's better than anything they've seen so far. It's going to be interesting to see how they do against a really stout rushing attack.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of one of the keys I jotted down here is I agree with you. The run defense has been very very good. Definitely one of the most improved aspects of the team.
Yeah,
Through 4 games so far. How much have they been tested? There's a lot of great rushing attacks in the Big 12, and this is one of them. I think this is kind of a nice prove it moment for that defense to see exactly where it's at with that run defense. And again, if especially the conditions are bad, I want to see. I like the big play capability of this defense. We saw it with
yeah,
just especially with Travis Hunter back there, not just with the interception, the big hit, the forced fumble. We saw Levant Bentley do it the week before, with the strip and the fumble recovery. I think this defense has a lot of that in it. I think it's a big show me moment kind of though for that run defense and exactly how stout it is against these kind of rushing attacks.
yeah. And I thought they did a good job. Baylor's got a good rushing offense, and they did a good job against that. And CSU's Justin Marshall, I think, is a really talented young running back, and they did a good job against him. But I think UCF's totally different. I mean, Harvey was one of the best backs in the country last year, and he's one of the leaders this year. Their number 2 guy is Penny Boone, who transferred in from Toledo. There was only 8 guys in the country last year, Pat, that had 1,400 yards, and Harvey and Boone are 2 of them, and now they're on the same
Yeah.
team. So, and then you have the running quarterback, which again, that's what we've seen kind of burn the Buffs. And Sawyer Robertson of Baylor had never been a running quarterback. I mean, 74 yards in his career as a runner, and he has 82 against the Buffs the other night. The leading rusher for North Dakota State was their quarterback, and so I think that um, KJ Jefferson, his running ability could be the difference in this game too. So I just think it's a really tough challenge for the Buffs.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens on Saturday. Well, I guess maybe get into predictions now. I kind of had this as a loss going into the season. I not ready to come off of that. The Buff special teams haven't been good. The penalties have been kind of rough. I said they're a little better in kind of the final numbers this past week against Baylor, but still ones at critical times. The kind of things you need to do to win on the road they haven't been good at some of
Yeah.
those little things. So, the conditions aside, I think it'll be a close game. I'm thinking something around 31-24 UCF, excuse me. And that's assuming there's bad conditions. If it's, if it's if guys can get going and they're not sloshing around out there, I think it might be a little bit higher scoring. But I'm gonna go with 31-24.
Okay. See, and to me, it's interesting. I'm not a gambler, but it's interesting to me to see what this line has done. I mean, it was 11 and a half on Sunday. Last night I looked, it was 15 and a half. UCF is favored by, that's a pretty big number.
Yeah,
But I'll be honest with you, I would not be surprised if UCF covers that number. I think, and I'm also wouldn't be surprised to see who wins this thing. So I'm gonna be all over the board here, but I'll settle in on a prediction. Um, I just think in the Big 12, the 9 game schedule, I think this is Colorado's toughest game.
yeah,
I think Utah might be a better, I think they are a better team, but they get them in Boulder. Kansas State's really good, but they get them in Boulder. I think this team in Orlando, I think it's going to be really tough. I mean, UCF, I've said it since the summer. I think they're one of the most underrated teams in the country. I had them top 25 the previous 2 weeks. I only dropped them out this week because I had to make room. They were idle,
yeah,
and I had to make room for some teams that had big wins, like a BYU,
yeah,
that had some big wins. So UCF's like my number 26. But I think they're underrated. They hardly ever lose at home.
yeah.
And I frankly have not seen enough from the Buffs to make me confident that they can go down to Orlando and beat this team. Yeah, I feel confident in that. I think they can. There's certainly a path to them doing it, but maybe I'm a little scarred by what I saw in Lincoln a couple weeks ago, and thinking that we could see something similar to that. But I'm going to go UCF 34, Colorado 21. I just
Okay,
think that it's going to be a really tough game out there for the Buffs, but I don't think like I said, it's not going to put them off schedule, in my opinion. I think that this is one I've
right.
had penciled in as a loss the whole time anyway. I think
Yeah,
if they win it, then they're ahead of schedule, and that's
yeah.
fantastic. And if they're 4-1 going to the bye week, I think they're in great shape.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is kind of we mentioned the result against Baylor, kind of just swung
Yeah,
what the perception of the team is going forward. This would kind of do the same thing. If you lose, it's like, okay, well, the kind of one you maybe penciled in as a loss anyway. Let's move forward. Uh, but if you win, all of a sudden you're ahead of the curve, and you have a lot of momentum to get that bye week and then get Kansas State in here.
yeah, and I will say too, we talked about this going into CSU, and even probably last week too. I thought there was a lot of pressure on the Buffs the last 2 weeks that they
Yeah,
had to win. I mean, I felt like I honestly thought the CSU game going into that one, like that was their season on the line. If they lost in Fort Collins, that was going to damage their season. I thought the same thing last week, that they really needed to beat Baylor. But this is one that I don't think there's pressure on them, and maybe that helps them. They can go out and just play. There's maybe a little pressure on UCF. Not only are they home, they're undefeated, but they got big noon kickoff there, and so there's gonna be a lot of expectations. But maybe that fuels them as well. So I think all of that makes it a fun matchup, and I would love to be wrong. I hope that they can go out and prove me wrong, but I think this is just be a tough one for the Buffs.
yeah, I agree with you. We'll see how it plays out. You're heading out early. Rearrange some travel plans to get there ahead of the storm.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous, kind of like the Buffs were. I mean, they were going to go out Thursday, I think afternoon or something, and they're going out today, Wednesday, as we do this. I moved ahead a little bit because I was worried about flight cancellations or delays and not even getting out there. So I'll be out there a little early, and hopefully, Orlando's not really in the projected hurricane path, but I'm sure it'll be nice and breezy and wet out there, and it'll be fun.
Well, looking forward to it. I'm actually going to be out of town this weekend, as you know.
Yeah,
So I'll be watching from afar, which I was going to be doing anyway. So, but hey, before we check out here, let's we both got out to a basketball practice started. I can't believe we're already at that
yeah.
point of the calendar. We both hit. Obviously, I was out the men's first practice. You were at the women's. Obviously, I'll throw some observations out there, but new look rosters on both sides, and kind of what did real quick, what were some of your impressions of that first women's practice?
Yeah, I was looking for name tags, because there's
Yeah,
hardly anybody I know anymore. I mean, honestly, there's 14 players on the team, and 10 of them are brand new to the program. And then there's another one, Kennedy Sanders, who who redshirted last year. So 11 of the 14 have never played a minute in a Buffs uniform. And so it's going to be very, very different. Last year at this time, they were coming off a Sweet 16 and had almost the entire roster back from the previous year. So you knew what you were getting. This year, it's like, have no idea. I've been asked a few times, what do you think of this women's team? Like, I have no idea. I've never seen most of these girls play. And so what I am confident in is J.R. Payne and her staff will keep them competitive. And I like Frida Foreman, Kendall Wetta, Sarah Rose Smith. These are girls that I've seen play that I know that can play well. So I think they're going to be competitive. It might be an uphill climb in a tough Big 12. Might be an uphill climb to get to the NCAA tournament, but I wouldn't put it past J.R. Payne.
Yeah, it's kind of how I feel about the men's team.
Yeah,
I think they have a chance to be better than people think. I don't think that they're going to be an NCAA tournament team, especially with just how tough the Big 12 is in men's basketball. But I think I think they'll be a tough out for some teams. I think Andre Yakumovsky, the transfer from Washington State, is going to be a good pickup. Very steady, good 3-point shooter. But that roster is pretty similar. Now they have guys like Yakumovsky, but they also, they have 6 guys between the 3 graduate transfers and the 3 freshmen. I'm sorry, 7 guys, 3 true freshmen plus Courtney Anderson, who redshirted last year as a redshirt freshman this year. None of them have played a minute for the Buffs. And then you've got R.J. Smith, who only played 7 games last year before a season-ending injury,
yeah,
and Javon Ruffin, who I'm kind of writing a feature on that will be out shortly as well. Obviously, a lot of talent hasn't been able to play a lot of basketball for the Buffs. That kind of leaves Julian Hammond and the 2 sophomore forwards, Bangat Dak and Asan Jop from last year, who didn't play a ton as freshmen. Obviously, Julian Hammond is a regular rotation guy, but also was kind of beset by some injuries last year that limited him. So definitely a new look team. I think they'll be better than people think. I think Elijah Malone's going to be a load on the inside. That's the NAIA transfer they got out of Indiana. And I think they have some good pieces. The big question, and I've already written about it, it's going to be that backcourt. They've got Julian Hammond and a lot of guys who are really unproven. It's kind of a tough place to be going into their Big 12, but Tad Boyle's expressed confidence in the guys that he's recruited, and they're going to roll with them. We'll see how it plays out, but they definitely need someone to really take it up to another level out of that backcourt if they want to be a tough out in the Big 12.
yeah. Well, 6 weeks of practice before the opener. These teams, they always need it, but they really need it this year as they get to know each other and get ready for this season. And we're going to talk obviously a lot more about basketball as we get closer to November. But real quick, soccer and volleyball. Soccer keeps winning. 3-0 in Big 12 play, I believe, right, and all of it on the
Yeah.
road. So impressive start for them. And we knew that the Big 12 was not as strong as the Pac-12. But you got to give credit to Danny Sanchez's club for coming out there and taking care of business and winning games that are winnable.
Yeah, boy, I keep thinking of just what this team would be looking like if they'd been able to finish that North Carolina game earlier this season. But they
Yeah.
haven't lost since then. The team is on the roll. Goalie Jordanitis set the consecutive scoreless streak program record in terms of minutes last week before Oklahoma State. But huge win against Oklahoma State that really set up this start. Was They hadn't given up a goal all year. Gave up 2 to the Buffs. They've started 3-0 for just the 4th time ever for a 3-0 start in conference play.
Hmm.
And the second time they've done it all on the road. So they get 5 of their last 8 at home, beginning this Thursday against Baylor. And they've done a lot of this without Shira James as well. They haven't had her for 3 of the past 4 games, including the past 2. I don't know if she'll be back this weekend. It sounds like she will be back sooner than later. Certainly don't want to rush her back from injury. But that's the other impressive thing. I don't think they go on a run last year with Shira James sideline, but it speaks to the depth and some of the talent. The Leba sisters are playing great. Jordan
Yeah.
Nidus is being fantastic in goal, and this team is really on a roll now, up to number 16 in the top 25.
Yeah. It's gonna be fun to watch them. It's amazing they're already looking down the second half of the season. But
Yeah.
how about volleyball? Different story with volleyball. But they're getting into some Big 12 play as well.
Yeah, they've been a little up and down, maybe to be expected with some of the youngsters they've gotten rotation. We've talked about it. They have a sophomore class that is kind of treading water out there, taking on some of the premier roles on the team. So it's been really up and down. They'll have a good match, bad match. That trend kind of continued last week in the home and home against Colorado State. So they'll have to grow up in a hurry, though. Big 12 volleyball is very tough, and they open league play this weekend with a really tough trip, starting with number 17 at BYU on Thursday night, and then familiar face in Utah on Sunday.
Yeah, well, lots of big things coming up, and yeah, Big 12 play in full swing now. The Buffs are Pac-12 is long gone. Pac-12's doing. They got their own drama
Hey,
going on right now.
Pac-12's not long gone anymore. So
For the Buffs, it is, but
yeah, right.
Pac-12 certainly the drama continues with the Pac-12, but we don't
Yeah.
have to worry about that anymore. So that's a Colorado State problem. Anyway, Pat, safe travels to you this weekend, and we'll catch up again next week.
Yeah, definitely. Safe travels to you. I'll be watching from beautiful South Bend, Indiana. But as always, folks, thanks for listening. Enjoy the weekend.